Welcome back to the continuation of the live coverage of the debate on the 2018-2019 estimates of expenditure. So far, a total of 8 parliamentarians have presented. So this leaves us with a total of 9 who are left to add their debate to the voice of the debate. The budgetary figure for the 2018-2019 estimated expenditure is $1,487,583,200. The government of St. Lucia will be focusing its efforts on several areas as articulated in the Governor General's throne speech. Remember, you can join this live coverage on the Government of St. Lucia Facebook page and YouTube channel, and also double event on 93.7 FM. With regard to the focus of the government and its work plan for the new financial year, as it relates to the health service, the government of St. Lucia is committed to delivering a more equitable and modern health service. Greater impetus said will be given to the commissioning of the new national hospital and continuing the transitioning of the Victoria Hospital to the ONEU hospital in a phased manner. It is also the government's goal, according to the Governor General, to complete this exercise within the coming fiscal year. Several attention will be given to education, building the human infrastructure, family and children, building safety nets, social safety nets. And so at this point, we await the arrival of the House Speaker, Honorable Andy Daniel, who will be presiding over the affairs of the House. All of the parliamentarians are here and awaiting the arrival of the Speaker. From my vantage point, I could see the Speaker coming up the stairs, which means that the House will officially start. And now I hand you over to the Speaker of the House.
Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister with responsibility for tourism, information and broadcasting, and member for Ancillary Canneries.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of elucidation. 32.6 in the standing orders, Mr. Speaker. Several questions were raised, Mr. Speaker, as it pertains to the Department of Tourism, for which I have ministerial responsibility. And I would like, Mr. Speaker, to ask your indulgence as I take some time to give clarification on the various issues. Mr. Speaker, Minister, 1 minute.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I will have to rise to object to the Minister that I don't know if the issues that were raised this morning. I would expect that, although I know this House doesn't like convention, the normal convention is that the Minister would rise and respond to the issues almost immediately. I don't understand why the Minister can take 24 hours and... Can I speak to you, Mr. Speaker?
Yes.
Thank you. This lack of manners is getting out of this way, this arrogance.
Leader of the Opposition.
This arrogance.
Leader of the Opposition.
Yes.
You're speaking to me, sir, not to any other person.
You. I would think that the Minister would stand immediately and if he needs to clarify something, do it. But you don't spend 24 hours or 12 hours and come back on a point that was said yesterday. I do not think... I'm not speaking to you.
Leader of the opposition.
I'm not speaking to you.
Gentle
And I
people.
will not speak to you.
Leader of the opposition, please, sir. Just have a seat for a few moments. Let me clarify that. Just have a seat for a few moments, sir. I'll call you back. Members, I am not going down a path that this House may have gone before. I expect that we shall do this as honorable men and women representing the people. I am hopeful that we all understand where I am trying to take this parliament from now on. Leader of the opposition, so you're speaking to me. Make your point, and I will rule accordingly.
Mr. Speaker, I would have thought that if the minister wants to use that standing order to elucidate something, he would have done it as soon as the member makes a point. But what the minister is trying to do, in my mind, is trying to make another speech. He waits for 12 hours and comes to deal with a point of elucidation that happened yesterday. I think that is an abuse of the standing order.
Leader of the opposition, until such time I hear or get an indication from the member where he wants to go, I cannot yet rule on your point. But what I will say to the other member for ancillary canneries and minister in the office of the Prime Minister, that 42.6 is very clear as to how he approaches his deliberation at this present time. Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in the rules of the debate with regards to expenditures, a minister is allowed to speak for a second time up to 1 hour when he is responding to issues that were brought up in the debate.
No. Yes.
Honorable Minister in the Ministry of Tourism, may I hear from you, sir?
Mr. Speaker, I stand on a point of order, Standing Order 32.5 in this instance. Mr. Speaker.
But on a point of order, Mr. Speaker, even if 32.5 provides for the minister,
Mr. Speaker,
on a point
Mr.
of order,
Speaker, I'm on the floor.
Just hold on,
I'm
sir.
stating it.
Gentle people, gentle people. Minister, he said he's writing on a point of order. Turn off your light, have a seat for a few moments.
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, even if 42.5 provides for the minister to speak again, 42.6 still applies. He can speak where he can state that there is a misrepresentation or in his presentation he was misunderstood. Yes, he has the right. Yes, he has the right. But every minister cannot then stand up and speak a second time because in effect, no, you're making a mockery of the standing orders. It means therefore that every minister can stand and think. Anyway, you're the chair and I have expressed, my point of order to you.
Very well. Gentle members. Gentle members, we're not going down that path, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, sir. Leader, Minister, and Member for Ancillary. You may continue, Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just find it necessary to rise and clarify a few things. There were several questions that were asked in various parts of the debate, some yesterday and some today, Mr. Speaker, as it pertains to the Department of Tourism, one in which I have responsibility for. Mr. Speaker, I would like to first answer the question raised, Mr. Speaker, by the member for Castries South as it relates to the allocation given to village tourism. There it was asked, Mr. Speaker, why was it in the year 2017-2018 that there was an allocated amount of 2.71 million, and this year we see an allocation of 324,000. Mr. Speaker, that is a valid question, but the answer is very, very simple for that, Mr. Speaker. And what it is, Mr. Speaker, it's not in any way an indication of our lack of seriousness to the village tourism project. But what it is, Mr. Speaker, it is a fact that the agreement signed with the Caribbean Development Fund allows, Mr. Speaker, for an additional $2.43 million, so $2,430,000 are available to St. Lucia in additional grants to the village tourism program. Mr. Speaker, I would like to reiterate here, Mr. Speaker, the seriousness with which this administration does approach the village tourism initiative with, and I want to make it absolutely clear that the reduction in the numbers is not for a lack of seriousness. Mr. Speaker, this is the single largest and single most important and transformational initiative that we as a government believe that we are instituting this year within the tourism sector. And Mr. Speaker, it will no doubt does give the local populace additional opportunities to get involved in businesses, get involved, Mr. Speaker, in restaurants and small hotels and inns, and Mr. Speaker, opening new sites and attractions, and become greater players of the number one tourism, the number one economic driver in St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, the question was also raised about the airline support, which was given to some airlines, and I think that that may have been confused with the MRG, or the minimum return guarantee. There's a big difference here, Mr. Speaker, in that with an MRG, what we ultimately do is a destination would take on the risk of an airline, and there's no added benefit. But in this case, with the airline support, this is a marketing agreement which we have with the airline company. So that specific allocation in the estimates refer very specifically, Mr. Speaker, to a marketing arrangement which we have with a number of airlines. Mr. Speaker, this strategic approach to the marketing then allows for the destination to perform better, because then you're getting the added advantage of brand visibility. And so, Mr. Speaker, we have seen the results from such initiatives, Mr. Speaker, where the tourism industry last year grew by some 10.5% overall, Mr. Speaker. We saw that the cruise industry, Mr. Speaker, grew by 13.9%, and that replaces a 16% decline in the following year, Mr. Speaker, in the year previously, in 2016. Mr. Speaker, it is also interesting to note that stayover arrivals grew by 11%, Mr. Speaker. Very good positive results coming out of these strategic marketing initiatives, as indicated in the airline support in the estimates, Mr. Speaker. The question was also raised, Mr. Speaker, about product development. And I think that I want to clarify and reiterate that we did indicate under the OECS competitive tourism project, there is a comprehensive overhaul of the Castries market, which will no doubt, Mr. Speaker, transform the entire downtown Castries area. In fact, within the same project, the Jeremy Street and the William Peter Boulevard are actually slated for added product development initiatives, as the government, Mr. Speaker, plan to spend some $40 million on this project over the next 6 years. Mr. Speaker, this will include a lot of training for our vendors. So it's not just the physical facade, but as we seek to develop the product, we will have a strong emphasis, Mr. Speaker, on raising the capacity and the wherewithal of various vendors so that they can raise revenue, so that they could increase the potential of sales that they do on a daily basis with tourists visiting the Castries market and various areas. Mr. Speaker, the question as it pertains to product development can also be answered with our village tourism program. Because in many ways, Mr. Speaker, this is a product development undertaking which will develop 8 of our villages. So if we start from some of our towns, if we start with Grosley, Soufrière, and Castries, will be given attention in addition to the villages of Ancillary, Canaries, as well as Micoud and Dennery under the program. And Mr. Speaker, it will essentially go into these areas and give them much product development support so that they can become stronger destinations in their own right and, Mr. Speaker, play a more important role in the development in our tourism industry. Mr. Speaker, the question of revenue was raised from the tourism industry by the member for Castries South. And Mr. Speaker, I want to quote Table 1 of the Social Economic Review for this year. And we see clearly, Mr. Speaker, that what you did when you raised the question about the impact on the vendor in Marigot. I want to remind you clearly. So, Mr. Speaker, the growth that we had, while we see that there has been exponential growth in the industry, and we see that the ships in the Castries Harbor were bigger than they have been before. Mr. Speaker, I want to leave this honorable House with the greatest level of assurance that we have seen numbers, Mr. Speaker, as indicated in the Social Economic Review, which is suggesting that there is an improvement of $110,900,000 coming from just hotels and restaurants as measured in the Economic Social Review. Mr. Speaker, this doesn't take into account the yachting sector. It doesn't take into account the cruise sector. And further numbers from the St. Lucia Tourist Board, Mr. Speaker, does suggest that the yachting sector would have provided some $72,242,619, while the cruise industry would have grossed $47,244,043 based on the BRIA study of 2016. Mr. Speaker, it is our opinion that there has been a significant growth in the number for the cruise per guest spend, Mr. Speaker, as we see that the disembarkation rate of various passengers have been on the increase. So, Mr. Speaker, the numbers are clearly indicating that the per guest spend to the destination is increasing significantly. So I want to leave the House, therefore, with every assurance that that is so. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for your indulgence and your time, for allowing me to clarify these issues as it pertains to developments within the tourism sector. I thank you.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of order 32.6, where the Honorable Member from Ancillary sought to clarify what he thought I had said, and he clearly misunderstood. The same for 32.6, he clearly misunderstood.
Sorry, sir. Mr. Sir, 36 only applies to a minister. Can he please sit down?
32.6 says a member.
Members.
A member.
Members.
Should I say it?
Yes, sir. There's a difference between, in my mind, 42.5 and 42.6. 42.6 starts with a member, meaning anybody sitting around the table, any one of you, have a second bite at the cherry to explain on the 42.6 anything you believe that has been misunderstood or misrepresented whilst you were speaking. 42.5, however, only refers to a minister. That's the difference there. The two distinct provisions. That is the interpretation, and I have sought clarification, and that is the accepted, from what I have been told, the accepted position on the two separate sections. Do you want to continue, sir?
Sure, Mr. Speaker.
And
Because the question,
you're still under the same standing order?
yes, I want to clarify because for the 2.6 you said is a member.
Yes.
I think I was misunderstood by the Honorable Member for Ancillary Canaries. I did not ask why is it there was a decrease in the capital allocation under the village tourism. What I asked...
So, let me clarify this. You can remain standing. You taking your second bite now?
Well, I could take as many bites as you give me.
No. I'm saying on the section
I just wanted to
42.6.
continue the explanation because you did not understand my question, so I'm taking the second bite now.
Go ahead.
So what I asked, Honorable Member, how was the $2.7 million, which was allocated for village tourism last year, how was it spent? I did not ask why it was reduced this year. There was $2.7 million from the CARICOM Development Fund, and I had asked you whether or not you can explain how the money was spent. Because if you spend $2.7 million in a year, I was raising the point that I cannot see the benefits in Castries South, that the people in the lay-by on the Marigo Beach had not had benefits, and I was asking how was it the money was spent, and I was not asking why there was a decrease. Now I know according to 45.5 you only have one option and you've just used it, so thank you very much.
Honorable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I beg that the House be adjourned for lunch for 1 hour until, suspended, sorry, until 1:30.
Honorable members, the question is that the House do stand suspended until 1:30 for lunch. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. House is suspended until 1:30.
Well, you just heard from the House Speaker that the debate has been suspended for 1 hour and will resume at 1:30. Stay tuned to the National Television Network for continued live coverage. You can also join us on the Government of St. Lucia Facebook page and YouTube channel, and also on WVent 93.5, 94.7 FM. Be sure to join us at 1:30 for continued live coverage of the debate on the estimates of expenditure.